While the extreme interest in meditation, particularly in the West, is to be welcomed, there is danger that its wide popularity and increasing familiarity with it may reduce it to a purely mechanical, even a commercialized process with instant methods of reaching states of yoga union. It is regretted that there are self-styled yogis who proliferate and thrive on such ignorance. Sita Nilakanta.
So today meditation is very fashionable, even in companies. And that is a good thing, but as everything in life, everything that is good has a not so good aspect. So the fact that something is massified always entails some kind of dangers. First, that it becomes a commercial product. When a number of people are interested in something, there is always somebody ready to sell it. And when you want to sell it, you want to sell something that the greater possible amount of people are going to buy it. So what you do is to simplify the product or to make it more palatable for as many people as possible. And when you do that, you necessarily have to water down whatever you are selling, be it meditation, music, art. There is always this question that the masses, and we are part of the masses in many aspects of life, simply because they are not cultivated in a particular aspect, they cannot appreciate but the more basic aspects of any discipline. For example, I'm not an expert in music, and a musician can appreciate many things that I'm deaf to that. I just cannot appreciate it unless I begin to put my mind into the subject and practice, and then I cultivate myself, and then I can appreciate what musicians do. So normally, when something becomes massive, it tends to become superficial. And the problem with that is that if we think that that is the whole of it, that is what it is supposed to be, then we may be missing very important aspects. For example, meditation is used a lot to reduce the stress, to generate more productivity in companies, to generate good feelings, and meditation works for those purposes. It can reduce your stress. It can heighten your productivity and all this. But approaching meditation with that intention is wasting what meditation really is. I always remember reading from Sandong Rinpoche. He was the right hand of the Dalai Lama for many years, and he's a member of the Theosophical Society, by the way, also. And he said, if you want to feel happy, just take a pill. Why do you bother trying to meditate if all you want is to be relaxed and happy? Meditation, the true meditation, is hard work. Or just sit and listen to music, or look at nature. Meditation is not to be happy. There is actually a book from Tibetan Buddhism that they stole my title, that I always thought we have to publish a book. The book is called Not for Happiness. And we are going to explore what we mean by this. But approaching meditation for these purposes is like saving money for a year to buy a great smartphone and using it for the flashlight. So you have this smartphone and all you use it is as a flashlight. It works as a flashlight, it's great. But you don't need to buy a smartphone for a flashlight. So meditation is far more transcendental than the aim of reducing the stress, which is it does, or producing some good feelings that sometimes it does, and that we are going to see. So meditation is far deeper than that, and we should not be confused about this, because, as I said the first class, in the spiritual life we get what we intend to get. So if you go to meditation for physical welfare, you will get physical welfare, but nothing else, for the most part. I'm generalizing, but for example, if you go to meditation to generate good feelings, you can get there. You can apply some techniques and get a feeling of peace. But that, with that intention, becomes the opposite to what meditation should do. Because what is the difference between, the essential difference between going to meditation to feel a pleasant sensation or eating to feel a pleasant sensation? There is a difference in the sense that it may be a little healthier, but essentially what you are doing is going after sensations. And the slavery to sensations is what keeps us in the round of suffering. The spiritual life is going beyond the identification with sensations, so that we are poised whether there are pleasant or unpleasant sensations. So using meditation to produce good sensations, good feelings, it is good psychologically, not spiritually. There are different levels. If you go to meditation to feel good, it will be good for the body. You release some stress. It will be good psychologically. We need to feel good. But because you go to meditation to produce certain sensations, from a spiritual point of view, you are still strengthening, as I said, the slavery to sensation. So spiritually, it's not really working. It's not doing anything for you spiritually. Now, many people need meditation on the psychological and physical level. I'm not against that. That's perfectly fine. If that helps them, to be more relaxed, to be more contented, that's fine. And indirectly, it may produce some spiritual benefit, in the sense that if you are less stressed, maybe your mind is a little calmer, maybe you can see some things a little deeper. But you are not, with that that use of meditation, you are not really going to cut the cause of suffering, the illusion. That approach to meditation is not doing anything in that ground. So we are going to see these things. This is why Sita Nirakantan was warning against this, or about this proliferation of meditation techniques that are always geared, or most of the time geared, towards giving you some personal satisfaction. Yeah, she was a relative of Sri Ram, and she lived in India for many years.
Meditation is often advocated as a relaxation technique or a method of reducing stress, and it can be very helpful in these ways. But it has much deeper aspects. Its greatest potential benefit lies in the fact that it offers the possibility of access to dimensions of consciousness which lie beyond the personal self. Meditation may be said to have a twofold purpose. It is a way of relating to the deeper aspects of one's nature, but it is not only that. It is also a way of relating oneself to a much greater reality, which we can think of under different guises, as the unity underlying nature, or the spiritual dimension, or God, or the divine milieu. Dora Kunz.
So by meditation, by that word, we include in our culture a whole different group of techniques with many different aims and goals. I would say what we are trying to do here, the theosophical meditation, which is recommended in the literature, is a kind of spiritual meditation. I think there are some physical meditations, psychological techniques of meditation, and spiritual technique of meditations. We discussed a little about the physical and psychological techniques of meditations that are aimed at producing a welfare on the physical and psychological sense. You will hardly ever find anything like that in the theosophical literature. Most of the instructions are with a spiritual intent. As Dora Kunz says there, the purpose of meditation, of the theosophical meditation, is first to lead you beyond the personal self, and so that you can begin to discover that dimension in yourself that is not personal. When we hear this, we may tend to think that the impersonal is either empty or scary, but that is only because we normally don't know impersonal states of consciousness. Impersonal states of consciousness are far more joyful, peaceful, harmonious, loving, all these things that we say we want. They are only present in impersonal states of consciousness. The personal self is the obstacle for all these states that we say that we are seeking. But normally we seek the impersonal through the personal, and that's why we never get it. The reason why we are always constantly looking is because we are looking in the wrong way, in the wrong direction. And this is what all serious spiritual traditions say. Now, of course, that doesn't sell. I've seen it for many years. If I give a talk that it seems that will address the personal self and promise the personal self all kind of things, I have a full room. But if you give a talk where you say you have to go beyond the personal, then you have 20 people. And that's what the Theosophical Society is here to do. I don't think we have to aim at becoming massive. Of course, it would be great if we can become massive, keeping the seriousness of the approach. But if that is not the case, we have to be contented. Again, I'm not saying that the other approach is useless or wrong. Most people, just like most people are not expert musicians, at this point in our human evolution, most people are not deep spiritual people. And they can profit from what we are calling, or I'm calling, more superficial approaches. That's perfectly fine. It's a natural process of growth. The problem comes when people who could go beyond, they don't know that there is a beyond, and they don't have anybody to help them to go beyond. So sometimes the superficial approach is so loud and is so pervasive that it's difficult for those who are ready to go a little beyond to find the guidance, to find some teachings. That's why I'm placing emphasis on this aspect. So as Dora Kunz says, meditation is first to take you beyond the personal self, and then to realize that your impersonal nature is one with the divine. So this is the aim when we talk about meditation in the Theosophical Society or in theosophical literature. This is normally what we are talking about. For example, Blavatsky says in passing in one of her articles, she talks about that useless technique of counting the breath. She says it's useless. Now, it's useless from what point of view? Again, it's useless from this particular point of view. Counting the breath is very useful when you are agitated, or when you need to take a pause, or when you need to relax. And all those things are perfectly fine. Now, that is not according to the theosophical view, that technique is not going to take you to realize your impersonal nature or to realize the divine. We need far more than that. Of course, there are some schools in Buddhism that they say the Buddha got enlightened just by watching the breathing. I personally don't think that can be the case, but in any way, it may be true. But the idea is that we need to know what place each technique and each approach has, and what can we expect from them. So yes, watching your breath can be very useful in many ways, but don't expect it to do something for which it is not designed to do.
One of the things that on the TS symbol that always illustrates where we are in this is if you look at the two triangles in the middle and the lighter triangle pointing up is spirit and the darker triangle pointing down is matter, and they're intertwined because right now as humanity we're in this struggle, this interconnectedness of spirit and matter. And then if you move to the center, the Ankh, with the circle which symbolizes spirit and the cross which symbolizes matter, spirit is now ruling over matter. And that's what we're working to. So instead of staying on the triangle where there's this battleground between spirit and matter, one of the objects or one of the ideas of this type of study is to move more inward to where we can get to a point where spirit is ruling over matter.
Mm-hmm. So again, don't take from what I say that I mean that all the other techniques are useless. They are very useful in their own places. So if you are agitated, come back to your breath, and that will help you. That is perfectly fine. Now, to go beyond, we need something more, as we are going to see.
Meditation has many objects, of which the principal ones are as follows. 1, it ensures at least once each day, a man shall think of high and holy things, his thoughts being taken away from the petty round of daily life. 2, it accustoms the man to think of such matters so that after a time they form a background to his daily life, to which his mind returns with pleasure when it is released from the immediate demands of his business. 3, it serves as a kind of astral and mental gymnastics to preserve these higher bodies in health and to keep the stream of divine life flowing through them. For these purposes, it should be remembered that the regularity of the exercises is of the first importance. 4, it may be used to develop character, to build into it various qualities and virtues. 5, it raises the consciousness to higher levels so as to include the higher and subtler things. Through it, a man may rise to the presence of the divine. 6, it opens the higher nature and calls down blessings from higher planes. Jeffrey Hudson.
So these are all points that meditation, the spiritual meditation we are talking about, begin to accomplish or to help us with. And we are going to see throughout this class some of these aspects. But you see that in none of them there is this idea of producing good feelings or relaxation, or all those are, as I said, they may come by default, as a secondary product, a byproduct, but those are never the aims of meditation. And also because if they are the aim, they become also an obstacle. For example, if you think that meditation should make you feel good, then if you meditate and you don't feel good, you think something is wrong and you stop meditating, or you think you are not good at meditating. So your expectation of feeling good in meditation actually becomes a trap, when the most effective meditations many times are tied to uncomfortable feelings. Because part of the process of meditation is to integrate in our awareness aspects that we are constantly repressing. And we are constantly repressing them because we don't like them. Now, if we are going to transform our nature, we have to see whatever is there. It's like in alchemy, you know that there is this process of turning lead into gold. And there is an inner alchemy where we can turn the lead into gold, the negative aspects into spiritual aspects. So we think that that's what we want to do, but we never want to look at the lead. We always are hiding the lead. So how are we going to turn it into gold if we are constantly hiding it? So meditation many times involves the opposite to good feelings, the opposite to a peaceful. So again, what are you trying to do? If you are trying with meditation to generate a nice feeling, just put some music, go to a beautiful place and feel good, and that's perfectly fine. But if you want to use meditation in the right way, then the feelings are secondary, and we are going to see that.
Some people assume they can reach great spiritual heights while flat on their backs in a warm and comfortable bed, or even a piping hot bath. Real meditation means strenuous effort, not the sensation of happiness which arises from a state of somnolence and bodily luxury.
Somnolence is like a drowsy kind of state. The older English has a lot of words that are similar to Spanish, so I always know these words better than Michelle, just because they are not so much used now, but they are very. We have somnolencia in Spanish, and we still use it. Today I was reading this morning an article in the newspaper. There was an article about finding yourself and kind of new agey thing. And then in the comments there was a guy that said, I tried with mindfulness for a year to find myself, and it was too much work. It was really hard work. So I found myself drunk in a pub. He was joking. But it is true. The true attempts at transcending the personal self are hard work. Now, in this age where we are so stressed, most people are looking for something that is not work. They are trying to look for something that makes them feel good, relaxed, etc. And that is a very valid need, especially because we are so stressed. So many people look to spirituality as a place where they don't have to make any effort. Now, if we want to transcend the personal self, the true spirituality, meaning realizing that spiritual nature that is beyond the personal self, it does entail a lot of work. Now, we can learn in time to do the work without being exhausting, without being stressful. It is very important in the spiritual life to know how to apply the energy without that producing some kind of strain or effort, and we are going to talk about that. But to try to transcend the personal self, it is hard work. So, of course, if we are ambitious, then we will be frustrated, or we will say, oh, then if it is hard work, I don't want to do this. I mean, we have to do whatever we can at the moment, and the little we can do will bring certain maturity that will allow us to do more. So we don't have to think of the effort needed to attain the ultimate enlightenment, because probably we can do that. But we can do many other things in daily life that will begin to set in order our life, our psyche, and that will bring us more energy to do more things. Because the problem is that we waste our energy, and then we don't have energy to work on the spiritual life. We waste our energy in external and internal conflicts, in this constant play of desires, this play of desire and frustration. All this inner psychological activity is constantly wasting our energy. And then we have very little energy to do these things. So with whatever energy you have, if you start paying attention to this, that will little by little free more and more energy, and then you will be able to do more. So we should face spirituality with no ambition, more as play with it. Try and discover and look, not so much with trying to attain something, because that backfires in general.
We have then to ask ourselves, what is the motive? Is it truly impersonal, or is it that we want to inflate our ego, to be more efficient as a personal adornment? Wallace Slater. You cannot meditate if you are ambitious. You may play with the idea of meditation if your mind is authority-ridden, bound by tradition, accepting, following, you will never know what it is to meditate on this extraordinary beauty. J. Krishnamurti.
So Krishnamurti, and of course the theosophical tradition, place a lot of emphasis on the motive. When Krishnamurti says you cannot meditate if you are ambitious, again, what is he meaning by meditation? Of course you can watch your breath, even if you are ambitious. Of course you can visualize something, or you can meditate in that way if you are ambitious, and you can get some physical or psychological benefits from it. But you cannot meditate in the way that we are talking about. You cannot go beyond the personal self if you are ambitious, because that ambition is the activity of the personal self. So as long as there is ambition, there is the personal self acting. What we need to learn is how to let go of the personal self and all its activities, ambition, frustration, fear, the need to possession or to possess things. We need to learn how to let go of all that, and then we begin to experience a higher kind of consciousness. So this is why there is a strong emphasis in the Theosophical Society about the motivation. You won't be able to transcend the personal self if you are feeding or if that activity of meditation is based on what the personal self wants. Of course, we all start there. This is a process, we all start because we want something personally. But if we never know about this, we will always be blindsided by that fact. And we may meditate for years and never really discover anything deeper, just because we don't realize that there is a trap there. But by being aware of it, even if we are doing something from the personal self, by being aware of it, that awareness begins to purify this. So it is important to know about it, and be honest and say, at this point I'm trying to meditate because I'm trying to find a way out of suffering, or this or that. So that is part of the motivation. But then you go and see if there is something different, if there is a different approach, and if you can let go of that and see what is left, for example.
Meditation means this opening out of the soul to the divine and letting the divine shine in without obstruction from the personal self. Therefore, it means renunciation. It means throwing away everything that one has and waiting empty for the light to come in. Annie Besant.
So here we see that there is this aspect of letting go of the personal self. When for this spiritual meditation, we need to learn how to let go of the personal and be open to the higher consciousness. So if we are there, it's like there was a Christian mystic, I think it was John Toller. He was a disciple of Meister Eckhart. Yes, and he used to say, if you are speaking, God will remain silent. If you are silent, God will speak. So he would say that in prayer, as long as you are asking for anything, God will remain silent, because it's all your show. You are there, asking and saying, and that only when you cease, then God will speak. He's very respectful. He doesn't want to interrupt you. So if you keep talking, he will remain silent. So this is basically the idea that we need to learn in meditation how to let go of the lower self, the personal self, so that the higher can shine through.
All you need is meditation. Well, there's a question. A general misunderstanding of this term seems to prevail. The popular idea appears to be to confine oneself for half an hour or at the utmost 2 hours in a private room and passively gaze at one's nose, a spot on the wall, or perhaps a crystal. This is supposed to be the true form of contemplation enjoined by Raja Yoga. It fails to realize that true occultism requires physical, mental, moral, and spiritual development to run on parallel lines. Damodar Mavalankar.
So Damodar was an early member, a contemporary of and an associate of Blavatsky and Olcott. And he wrote a couple of articles on meditation that he called on contemplation, because people were asking for techniques of meditation. So he was saying, meditation is really far more than a particular technique. And he also talked about the motivation. He said, if you are going to meditation running away from life, or because you are disappointed with life, all those motives are part of the personal self. So you need to learn how to transcend that. And he talked about meditation as a state of awareness in daily life and all that, which was far before all these ideas became more commonly known. And then he published this article in the Theosophist, and then people started sending letters to say, okay, so what technique should we apply? And then he wrote another article saying, I must not have been clear at all, because I was saying that techniques are not the thing, you know. Of course, techniques have their place. We can talk about that a little, but the basic idea is that meditation requires, the spiritual meditation we talk about is not a technique to produce a momentary feeling or state. Meditation in this way is something that in which we try to change the level of our consciousness throughout the day. So it is very important how we live our life, and then when we do our meditation, that is a moment in which we generate a kind of artificial environment where we don't have challenges or distractions, and we create this artificial environment not to enjoy ourselves, but to try to see deeper. So whatever we can see deeper or attain a little deeper state, a little more poised, more detached from thoughts and emotions, then we need to try to keep that state throughout the day. Of course, at the beginning, we will lose it as soon as we left the cushion, but then we keep trying, and little by little that changes the tone in which we meditate, we live. And then that kind of living will allow us to come back to the next session of meditation and go a little deeper. Because the same mind that during the day is constantly running from one object to the other, that is constantly seeking for sensation, that is constantly worried or fearful, that is the same mind that then we expect to be able to meditate. We sit in the cushion and it's the same mind. So meditation is never separate from the way we live. And that is one of the reasons for many people meditation seems ineffective, because many people think of meditation as going to Mass on Sunday. You are a Christian on Sunday, and then the rest of the week you are just selfish and manipulative, and then in Mass you are a good Christian. So meditation is not something isolated from life, and that's what we are going to see.
What we can do in meditation depends upon what we are doing all day long. If we have built up prejudices in ordinary life, we cannot escape from them during the time of meditation. But if we patiently endeavor to root out our prejudices and to learn that the ways of others are just as good as our own, we are at least on our way towards establishing a gentle and tolerant attitude which will assuredly extend itself to the special time of our meditation. C.W. Leadbeater.
Although the Theosophical Society in the West was the first organization in proposing meditation in a systematic way, it never proposed meditation as the exclusive spiritual technique. We can stay in our room sitting on a cushion and imagine that we are great, but we can only work on ourselves through relationship. So if all we do is to stay isolated, we may attain states of mental peace, but all these seeds for reaction are still there. All these seeds that we call skandhas in theosophy, this is a Sanskrit word that is used also in Buddhism and Hinduism. All these seeds can only be worked out through relationship. Otherwise, they fall dormant, and you meditate for 10 years, and then you go back into the world, and then all those seeds are stimulated again. So what we need is a cycle of going outside and going inside, and outside and inside. We need that kind of activity. So the daily life is the foundation for meditation and is the fruit of meditation, because it is a cycle.
Effects of meditation. The ultimate object of yoga, Dr. Taimi once wrote, is to reverse the process of centralization of consciousness. Yet many people imagine that they can use what they call yoga to confirm and enhance the centralization of consciousness for the purpose of strengthening and endowing the me with powers and immunities. Such an attempt by the dewdrop to appropriate the shining sea for its own small purposes leads to conflict and failure.
So in the theosophical view, the idea is that from the unity, all the diversity is manifested. So this universal self is manifested as this individual self. And that universal consciousness is centralized or focalized in these different fragments that we call ourselves. And the process of the spiritual path, the yoga of theosophy, is to go back to break that centralization and realize the unity that is behind. So this is what Hugh Sherman is referring there. And he says that to imagine that the spiritual path is another option or another way to endow the personal self with more powers and with more this or that is a mistake, because that very concentration on the personal self is the opposite to what spirituality really is about. You know, you have some New Age books that they talk about the spirit as being the real and the source of power and the source of this and the source of that, and all that is perfectly theosophical. But then the way they put this is that, therefore, since your spiritual nature is all this, you can use all those powers and qualities for your personal benefit. And that is a reversal of what we try to do in theosophy. What we say is the spiritual aspect of us is powerful, peaceful, joy, love, all that we normally use to describe it. So what we have to do is to go up there, not to try to bring that to the personal self, so that we can enjoy better, as a personal self in the world. Because first, that cannot be done. That is either a mistake or a lie, so that you buy those things. But the real aim of the spiritual life is to rise your consciousness to the spiritual, not to try to bring the spiritual to the personal. In the way that I'm talking about. Of course, when you rise your consciousness to the spiritual, then you are leading your personal life in a spiritual way. So you could say that you are bringing that down. But what I mean is that if the spiritual nature is the real, then don't try to manipulate that and to use it for personal benefits. It's the opposite. We have to let go of the personal for the spiritual.
I just wanted to touch on immunities. I think we all get the acquiring of powers, and we can kind of let that go. But this word immunities, it's something that I have to catch myself on. I think if I lead a spiritual life, I'll be immune to financial sufferings or relationship sufferings or things like that. I won't ask for better relationships or ask for finances, but I think by my very practice, it's making me immune to it. And yeah.
And actually the spiritual path is in many ways the opposite, in the sense that when we are going to see that in the last two classes, but the physical plane, as we said, being embodied in the world, is a school, is a training. Our true nature, in the philosophical view, in the New Age approach, we incarnate as soon as possible. When people read your past lives, you were alive 20 years ago or even less. And of course you were always some kind of king or some important person. A person told me once that I was the reincarnation of, I don't remember, I think it was Krishnamurti or something. And I said, well, if that is true, I would be thoroughly depressed. Because if I was Krishnamurti before and now I am this, I did something very wrong. So that is not really. But
Besides the fact that Krishnamurti was alive
when I was
you were
born. But you go to past life readings and people want to feel that they were important, and they are all important people, not just, you were just a farmer there, nobody knew you, you had a regular life. That's not very exciting. But anyway, what I was trying to say is that in the theosophical view, from the more spiritual you are, the longer it takes for you to incarnate on general basis. There are all kind of exceptions to the rules. But the idea is that we die and we spend on the inner planes, in these states of bliss, as much time as spiritual aspirations we had during our daily life. If we were very materialistic, we will incarnate right away or very fast. If we were spiritual, we need a lot of time to work out and assimilate all those aspirations that we had in our daily life. So normally, the idea is that people incarnate, in the theosophical view, the idea is that people incarnate between 600 years to 2,000 years, between one incarnation and the other. If you were spiritual, you incarnate every 2,000 years or 1,500 years. Why? Because the life in the physical body is a very brief and very specific experience in the soul. This is not our world. This is not our home. We are here in exile. Our true home is our life on the inner planes that we experience when we are out of the body, when we are not incarnate. And the soul comes every now and then to the physical plane to make a specific effort to generate certain realizations. So the physical plane is like when you go to the gym. You don't live in the gym. You go to the gym, once or twice a week, and you don't go there to drink coffee. You go there to train and to make an effort and to, try to develop something. That is the quality of the physical plane. We come to the physical plane to make an effort, to work, to develop. That is what the soul wants. But when the soul comes here, it forgets why the soul went to the gym, and there is nice juice there and nice people, and they start talking, and then nothing happens. Then the time for the gym finishes, and the person didn't accomplish anything. So a person that is serious in the spiritual path, really serious, many times will find that the challenges increase rather than decrease. I'm talking about the immunities that Michelle was talking about. Because this life is actually for work, not just to waste our time. But it's fine, each soul does whatever it can, and wherever each person is the right place for that person. I'm not trying to be judgmental.
Saying that if you're not struggling every day, you're not very spiritual.
It's like if somebody asks you what's the average time of life in humanity, you may say 70, 80, 90 years, but there are people who die at 2 and there are people who live longer. So we are talking about general rules, which then in specific cases there is always variety or variation.
What the ordinary person calls his mind is exclusively the lowest part of it. In his mind there are 4 subdivisions, consisting of matter of the 7th, 6th, 5th, and 4th subplanes of the mental plane respectively. But practically he is using matter of the lowest or 7th subplane only. That is very near to the astral plane. Therefore, all his thoughts are colored by reflections from the astral world, and so they are much mixed with emotions, feelings, and desires. One of the things we as students are trying to do in our thought and meditation is to awaken the higher parts of the mental body and bring them into working order. C.W. Leadbeater.
So, for example, if our physical body is not well for any reason, you have a problem in your knee or you have some overweight or whatever it is, no matter how much you want to run a marathon, you won't be able to do it, properly. Same thing with the spiritual life. We may not want to react to a situation, or we may not want to act being pushed by the emotions in a situation, but we may be unable to do it just because we don't have the right kind of emotional body or the right kind of mental body. It is a material thing, just as if your body is not good, you cannot run. There is something material about the skills that we can actually show in our daily life. So meditation is like exercise. It's exercise for our emotional and mental bodies. There are different, in the philosophical view, there are different degrees of matter, and the lowest kind of mental matter that we use for our thoughts is very much in tune with the emotional matter. So if that kind of matter is constantly affected by emotions, so if that is the kind of matter that is active in our mental body, our emotions will always influence our thoughts. In meditation, one of the things that we do in meditation, we try to put our mind on subjects that can only be conceived by using the higher mental matter. So what we do is we start feeding our mental body with this higher mental matter. And the more we incorporate this matter, thinking for the mental body is like eating for the physical. We shape our mental body and we feed it with the thoughts that we have. So when you try to think of spiritual things, it's like eating good food. And the more we begin to generate a mental body that has this kind of matter, the better we are in shape so that our thought is not influenced by the emotions, for example. And the same with the emotions. The more we try to feed our emotional body with positive emotions, then the easier it is for us to be able to keep in a state of more poise and balance. So one of the effects of meditation is to begin to reshape our emotional and mental bodies, because we are applying our minds to things that are of a spiritual and impersonal nature, and we attract that kind of matter then to our subtle bodies.
Although the man in his daily meditation may see but little progress, a clairvoyant watching him will see exactly how the astral and mental bodies are slowly coming out of chaos into order, slowly expanding and gradually learning to respond to higher and higher vibrations. He can see, though the experimenter cannot, how each effort is gradually thinning the veil that divides him from that other world of direct knowledge.
So most of the work, the way there are two spiritual paths in the world. According to Blavatsky, she would characterize all the different techniques and approaches as two basic spiritual approaches. One is trying to come from below up, and the other is trying to come from above down. So she would say the techniques of Hatha Yoga, and when she talks about Hatha Yoga, she's not talking about merely the asanas. The asanas are perfectly fine. Blavatsky says Hatha Yoga is very dangerous, it will lead you to black magic, but she's not referring to the Hatha Yoga of the asanas. She's referring to the manipulation of the chakras, the tattvas, the different energies, and kundalini, and all a series of things that, unless you are an occultist, are dangerous. For the most part, many people today, they do that, and because their efforts are not successful, they are protected from the bad, It's a good thing not to be really serious about bad things, because then nothing bad really happens. But if you are really serious and you engage in certain practices, it may be quite dangerous. But anyway, what I was trying to say is that Blavatsky said that there is an approach to spirituality in which you try to produce higher states of consciousness by manipulating the lower. So, you try to stop your breathing so that your mind is calm. The other way around is to stop your mind and then your breathing will be calm. For example, Shankaracharya, who was one of the founders of Vedanta, he said, the wise pays attention to pacifying the mind, and the unwise tortures his nose, trying, to manipulate the breathing. So, in the theosophical approach, which coincides with the approach in Advaita Vedanta or in Raja Yoga or in some others, is from above to below. So, all the techniques we use begin to change the higher principles, and there is a lag time until that change on the higher principles will begin to show on the physical plane. And we need to be ready for that. Unfortunately, in our culture, we want instant results. So a person, I remember, a person came to teach a technique of meditation where the technique of meditation was based on smiling. So all you did there is, you sit and you smile, and then you will get these good feelings and all that. And of course, you can get some good feeling by smiling, but to me, the universe would be kind of a joke if that's all you need to liberation. All this terrible suffering we have in humanity could be solved simply by sitting and smiling. Of course, I'm not saying that you sit and smile, that generates some, neurotransmitters, but the effect is superficial. Now, that kind of technique, people do it, they feel good, in 5 minutes, and they think, oh, this technique is good, this produces results, it's an immediate result. Now, these other techniques of meditation, they may take years for you to begin to see a change in your personality. But that change is a real, radical change that happens. Everything in nature is gradual, it takes a long time, but then every little change is something that becomes eternal, not momentary. So when talking about, or when judging all these techniques, we have to be careful not to judge them from the lower self. The lower self wants immediate results. This is why we need to understand everything so that our mind, Shankaracharya again, he said one of the importance of studying is that the intellectual certainty that something is in a certain way, that you say this makes sense, will sustain the effort until the results begin to appear, and then the results are the strength behind your efforts. But before that, the intellectual certainty will keep you going. And this is why it is important to understand all this. This is very scientific. The theosophical literature explains everything in a very scientific way. Scientific in a wider sense, not that these things can be measured by machines, but in a very logical way. And the more you understand this, the more confident you are that this makes sense, and you keep going in spite of not seeing immediate results.
There's two things that always help me with this. One is 10,000 hours of any activity will usually get one to expert level, and I don't know if I said this here, but I know on the internet they say that's not true. But I have to imagine that anything you do for 10,000 hours, you're going to be fairly good at. So like Pablo said, if you sit and meditate for 30 minutes a day, by this 10,000 hour rules, it will take you 56 years to become an expert at meditation. However, if you meditate your 30 minutes a day and then can carry that over, that awareness, into 5 hours a day, you cut your expert time down to 5.6 years. So either way, we're not talking months or a year, we're talking 5 or 6, we're talking some time. The other thing is that the body changes its cells over. We've all heard this, so you actually have a new body every 7 years, I think it is. So if you think about that, all the habits, all the knowledge, all the skandhas, the simple skandhas that are in those cells, if you're working on them, it's going to take that time till new cells regenerate that don't have those glitches in them. And then I added that one. So there's a third thing when you talked about the lag time. When I think about in science that critical mass, that something has to build up over time and get to that point, and then the shift happens. And it's something that's really hard to explain, say, to a teenager. Why do I have to do all this little stuff or all this stupid stuff that isn't directly, in line with what I want to do? But I think all these other little things that we do along the way add to that critical mass so that when we reach that threshold, that shift happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
All right, and yeah, this should be the last one.
People sometimes think that because they do not feel happy or uplifted after a meditation, it is therefore a failure and entirely useless. It is a mistake to suppose that a meditation which is unsatisfactory to them is therefore ineffectual. In the work of our meditation, sometimes we feel happy and uplifted, and sometimes not. But in both cases alike, it has been acting on our higher bodies, as do the exercises of physical training for our physical body. It is pleasanter when you have what you call a good meditation. But the only difference between what seems a good and a bad one lies in its effect upon the feelings and not on the real work which it does towards our evolution. People are apt to think. Oh, you don't want me to go there?
No, that was the pillar that I forgot to put. So I think that's very important. Again, why do we judge things according to how they make us feel? Feeling is just part of our nature. Of course, it is nicer to have pleasant feelings, but feelings should not be the rule that says what is right, what is wrong, what should we do or shouldn't, what is working or not. That way of thinking is the thinking with the lower kind of mental matter that is constantly influenced by the feelings. At this point in evolution in humanity, we are quite there. We are still using, as Peter said, that mental matter that is still too much entangled with the emotions, and that's why we tend to think in this way. Well, if it makes you feel good, then it is good. If not, it is not. So what Peter says there is, never judge your meditation for how you feel. But again, that's completely against what most people say meditation is for. Most people will tell you, you meditate and you will feel much better and happier and peaceful. And that is not the purpose of this kind of meditation. Therefore, how we feel is secondary. That you feel peaceful or not, it's just like if you are learning to play the piano, you are practicing, and one day you may feel bored, the other day you may not feel bored. But in both cases, you are practicing and you are learning, regardless of how you feel. So I think this is also something important to keep in mind in the practice of meditation. No, we can stop there. The rest is more or less similar. Okay. So now we can take the break. I don't know, is there anybody that has some questions? Oh, we have 10 more minutes, don't we? Yeah. Oh, great, sorry. Okay, so any questions or comments about this? And you may decide, I realize that some things that I'm saying may, seem a little either shocking or irreverent or just wrong. And you may be right and I may be wrong. I mean, I agree with with this particular view, but I'm open to give you room.
Questions galore.
A couple of years ago, I spent some time at an esoteric school down in Agaroa, and the emphasis on meditation there was to build the bridge from the lower self to the higher self, so that you operate more from the higher self in all your daily dealings with people and that the higher self normally came with a purpose, depending on your ray, on what strengths you have to go out into the world. Can you speak a little bit about that? Is that something that...
I didn't understand the last part. The higher self, what?
The different ray that you had from an esoteric point of view indicated where your perhaps strengths and purpose may be to serve humanity, and therefore the idea was to build the bridge so that you operated more from that higher self and then gave back to humanity.
Yes, the idea of the 7 rays was first talked about by Blavatsky, but very briefly and mostly referring to the origin of the 7 rays. In the way Blavatsky would explain it, you have like the deity of the system, the logos, and that deity has 7 main modalities of expression, which we call, I mentioned these words for those of you that may know it, but it's the Dhyani Buddhas. These are the highest beings in a system, maybe like the 7 archangels or something like that, which are the centers of consciousness that will embrace all the different divine sparks that belong to that particular ray. So, for example, we all live within a particular being. That's the idea. For example, if I belong to the second ray, for example, my divine spark is like a cell in this logoi, in this dhyani, which is the head of that kind of ray. It's a little difficult to explain without the right context, but Blavatsky explained only that. Then Subarro, who was a contemporary of Blavatsky, he said all the monads belong to a particular ray, meaning are cells of this particular great being. Now, neither Blavatsky, and he said it is impossible to know through the personality what's the ray of the monad. Then later Ernest Wood, he talked more about the 7 rays as how those rays express themselves in personal characteristics. And of course, Jeffrey Hodgson also wrote quite a bit about the 7 human temperaments and the 7 rays, and they would define the rays in ways or as different qualities that the personality has. I'm not sure if those qualities, my impression, if we bring together what all the theosophies said, my impression is that the monad may belong to a particular ray, but the monad is for the most part not clearly expressed through the personalities of people. But the personalities themselves may have a particular ray also, may belong to a particular ray that may be or may not be the one that the monad it belongs to. I think Alice Bailey, who of course wrote also quite a bit about the 7 rays, I think she talks about like the monad having its own ray and the higher self or the higher ego having its own ray, and then the personality, and that may make sense. I think that's a possibility. So probably all these descriptions about the qualities of the rays that we can identify with are maybe more descriptions of the ray that the personality belongs to, or that the higher ego belongs to. So I think it's fine. I haven't really been attracted to that classification. I know about it, but I haven't really been attracted much to the idea of the first ray. Is these people that have willpower and they tend to be in positions of ruling positions, leaders. And then the second ray is related to wisdom and, you know, the sage and etc. There are different qualities.
But those other qualities, because there's like the teacher ray per se, those that follow under those qualities, more people that are more in a scientific nature that
Scientific,
follow under those qualities,
artists.
artists.
Then I think that the fifth is similar to the third. It was related to
The
knowledge.
spiritual
something like
leader
that.
was one of them, or
Then the sixth is devotion, and the seventh is ceremonial. So I don't know if that helps you.
It was just a different way they used the meditation. It was a vehicle to get to, because you
have different rays depending, you have a mental ray and a soul ray and a personality ray. You have, I think there's a combination of 5, and each of them obviously operate differently. But meditation itself, for me, it was really quite profound, because it wasn't just meditation, it was to raise the energy, the vibration of your lower self, so that it more aligned with the higher self, and therefore that purpose to serve, the whole thing was in serving humanity, really.
Yeah, and that is the theosophical aim, to unite the higher and the lower, and of course to help humanity, as we are going to see. I don't know how the race would play into that. I don't know this particular system. There is a little danger in labeling oneself, in that what I talked about, whatever seems to be natural for us, we tend to emphasize it. So as long as we don't become exclusive, sometimes in the TS also develop this idea of the margas, the paths. So the path of the devotional person, the path of the intellectual, and that also I think is a dangerous concept, in the sense that it may tend us to be less holistic in our development. But it is true that there are certain techniques that will work better with the devotional person, and some others that will work better with the intellectual person. That is true, and we can take advantage of it, as long as we don't let in our mind think that this is my path and this little piece is my path. Yeah.
Robin? So I'm not sure if this is in the theosophical literature, if you've heard anything about it, where you might have somebody who's come from another constellation, and they actually do samadhi, and actually their body is there, and they've come down to planet Earth, and they take on another physical form to do their work. I don't know if there's any information in the Theosophical Society about this. I'm not sure whether there is something to do with the Sai Baba connection. Have you heard anything about this?
No, I heard some theories like that, not within the TS. If anything, there is the idea that some beings from Venus, that is a different evolutionary chain, which right now it doesn't have evolution in the physical plane, but evolution goes through different planes, and some of them, because that evolution began earlier than the Earth, they can help. And there is something like that in the theosophical literature. Not much about what you were saying, and again, I'm always a little, and it's just my personality. It doesn't need to be true. Maybe it's my scientific conditioning, but I'm always a little skeptical about these theories, because it feels to me, it may be true, but it feels to me that we, after all, what's the difference if my soul came from another planet? It's just a planet, but it feels that like I need to feel special. Somehow I don't fit in the society, so I need to generate an explanation that I am from another planet or another galaxy. Even if I were from another galaxy, it's just a planet, and for the people who live in that planet is so ordinary as Earth is ordinary for us, for example. Suddenly you are born, suppose you are born in this other planet, and oh, she comes from Earth. Well, we come from Earth right here. What's the difference? You know, so I don't find inspiration or the use in these kind of concepts. That doesn't mean that they may not have a you know, something that is useful for you, or that may be true. How do we know? You know, my approach to spirituality is quite pragmatic. If this all we have are beliefs, because whether we say there is something after death, there is nothing after death, is a belief. Now, some beliefs may be more rational or less rational, more based on, you know, some foundations that you see or less. But ultimately speaking, we don't know. So if an idea inspires you to be a better person, well, use the idea until the idea doesn't.
I think I'm talking more about a dual lifetime. Where you've got a dual lifetime, you've got an entity, you've got an entity that's still there, but at the same time, a spark of them has come down to do work here.
That is the case of all of us.
So, I don't know if there's anything in the secret doctrine about
Well, in a certain sense, that is the case of all of us. We have a dual life because our true life is the life of what technically is called the higher ego. The word ego means I-ness, not ego in the sense that psychology later developed. So we are really like these, if you want to put it this way, these angelic beings on the angelic realm that are having a personal experience on earth, but we don't belong to this. As I said, this is just like the gym. Our true realm is this angelic realm that the Gnostics would call the pleroma, and we have this dual experience. When we go to sleep, we let go of the personality, and then, especially spiritual people, come back to the awareness of their true essential nature. So that is just a common fact. We can embellish it and say that this is another, you know, dimension, and but not in the way that you are saying. I haven't found it in the theosophical literature.
You mentioned watching the breath for meditation or counting it. And I'm finding that sometimes I count it so that I can remain in a concentrated way. That doesn't always work either. But when you were going into more how we look at our thoughts, like when we have a thought, and you're saying how we respond to it, are you going to go into that?
Yeah, we will. There is a whole class for that. Yeah, we will talk about that.